Hello, and welcome to Read Aloud for Justice with the Rho Theta Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. My name is Lindsay, and I will be your hostess for today. Today, we are talking about the word justice. Have you ever heard that word before? What do you think justice means? Justice helps us learn what is right, what is wrong, and how we can be fair and equal to everyone. Now, we'll talk more about that later because we have 3 awesome stories for you to hear today. But if we're reading aloud, that means we're using our voices. So let's get our voices warmed up with a little song. What song did you hear when we first started today's show? Do you know what it was? That's right, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. But today, we're going to change the lyrics. Do you want to warm up your voice with me? Okay, just listen and repeat. Freedom, freedom, let it ring. Let it ring, said Dr. King. Let it ring from north to south. Let it ring from house to house. Freedom, freedom, let it ring. Let it ring, said Dr. King. You sound great! Good job! Do you think you can put our song together and sing it with me? Let's try! Freedom, freedom, let it ring. Let it ring, said Dr. King. Let it ring from north to south. Let it ring from house to house. Freedom, freedom, let it ring. Let it ring, said Dr. King. Great job! And if you didn't remember all the words, don't worry about it. You'll get another chance to sing it as we go along today. Now, you may have heard us say the name of a very important person, a person who we are celebrating today. Do you know whose name we said? That's right, Dr. King, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And today we will hear 3 stories that talk about Dr. King and about the beliefs that he always spoke to us about. So, open up your listening ears and let's listen to our very first story.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time to join me today to hear a story about a wonderful man. This story is Martin's Big Words, the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This story was written by Doreen Rapport and illustrated by Brian Collier. Everywhere in Martin's hometown, he saw the signs white only. His mother said these signs were in all southern cities and towns in the United States. Every time Martin read the words, he felt bad until he remembered what his mother told him. You are as good as anyone. In church, Martin sang hymns. He read from the Bible. He listened to his father preach. These words made him feel good. When I grow up, I'm going to get big words too. Martin grew up. He became a minister like his father. and he used the big words he had heard as a child from his parents and from the Bible. Everyone can be great. He studied the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi. He learned how the Indian nation won freedom without ever firing a gun. Martin said love when others said hate. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. He said together when others said separate. He said peace when others said war. Sooner or later, all the people of the world will have to discover a way to live together. In 1955, on a cold December day in Montgomery, Alabama, Rosa Parks was coming home from work. A white man told her to get up from her seat on the bus so he could sit. She said no and was arrested. Montgomery's black citizens learned of her arrest. It made them angry. They decided not to ride the buses until they could sit anywhere they wanted. For 381 days, they walked to work and school and church. They walked in rain and cold and in blistering heat. Martin walked with them and talked with them and sang with them and prayed with them until the white leaders had to agree they could sit anywhere they wanted. When the history books are written, someone will say there lived black people who had the courage to stand up for their rights. In the next 10 years, black Americans all over the South protested for equal rights. Martin walked with them and talked with them and sang with them and prayed with them. White ministers told them to stop. Mayors and governors and police chiefs and judges ordered them to stop, but they kept on marching. Wait! For years, I have heard the word wait. We have waited more than 340 years for our rights. They were jailed and beaten and murdered, but they kept on marching. Some black Americans wanted to fight with their fists. Martin convinced them not to by reminding them of the power of love. Love is the key to the problems of the world. Many white Southerners hated and feared Martin's words. A few threatened to kill him and his family. His house was bombed. His brother's house was bombed, but he refused to stop. Remember, if I am stopped, this movement will not be stopped because God is with this movement. The marches continued. More and more Americans listened to Martin's words. He shared his dreams and filled them with hope. I have a dream that one day in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. After 10 years of protest, the lawmakers in Washington voted to end segregation. The white-only signs in the South came down. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. cared about all Americans. He cared about people all over the world, and people all over the world admired him. In 1964, he won the Nobel Peace Prize. He won it because he taught others to fight with words, not fists. Martin went wherever people needed him. In April of 1968, he went to Memphis, Tennessee. He went to help garbage collectors who were on strike. He walked with them and talked with them and sang with them and prayed with them. On the second day there, he was shot. He died. His big words are alive for us today. The end. I hope that you enjoyed this story. And if there were some things about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that you didn't know before this story, I hope that you would take that information and share it with others that you love. Thank you and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Wow, that was a great story. Thank you, Miss Sharritha. What big words did you hear in that story? I heard love, people, segregation, power. What did you hear? Oh, do you know what I hear? I think that is our freedom song. Sing it with me and let's listen to our next story. Freedom, freedom, let it ring, said Dr. King. Let's go.
Kamala Harris, rooted in justice. Eve slammed the door when she got home from first grade. Eve, you know we don't slam doors in this house, her mom said. What's going on? Teacher asked what we wanted to be when we grew up, and I said president, and Calvin said, girls can't be president, stupid. Well, he's wrong, said her mother. Girls can grow up to be president. In fact, a girl from right here in Oakland hopes to be president one day. Life is a story you write day by day. Kamala's begins with a name that means lotus flower. See how her beautiful smile opens wide like petals fanning across the water's surface. But you don't see the flower's roots, her roots. They grow deep, deep, deep down. Let me show you. Kamala's family line was a strong black and brown braid coiling from India, where her mother, Shamala, was born, to Jamaica, where her father, Donald, was born, to Berkeley, California, where her parents fell in love and married, to Oakland, where Kamala was born. It was a good beginning. Is this like Once Upon a Time? Not exactly, said Eve's mom. This story is true. Right away, Kamala was like clay her parents molded for action. When her mother wasn't hunting cures for cancer and her father wasn't teaching, both marched for civil rights and went to lectures by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Kamala was right there too, bouncing along in her stroller, chewing on her pacifier, and words like peace and justice. What's justice? Eve asked her mom. Justice is another word for fairness. Once, when tiny Kamala was fussing, her mother couldn't figure out what was the matter. What do you want, little girl? She asked. Freedom, said Kamala, and a waterfall of laughter sputtered from her mother's mouth. At demonstrations, marchers often chanted, "What do we want?" And the answer was always freedom. Little Kamala had been listening. Kamala's baby sister Maya screamed her way into the world when Kamala was 2. In no time, the sisters were having faraway adventures together, like visiting their grandparents in Zambia. Grandfather P.V. Gopalan was a senior diplomat there. He had once fought for India's independence. His wife, Rajam, Kamala's grandmother, fought for the rights of women. Little by little, on these visits, Kamala and Maya learned that fighting for justice ran in the family. Sadly, when Kamala was 7, her family squeezed into a different shape. Her parents divorced, and her daddy moved to Palo Alto, while Mommy and the girls packed for the Flatlands, the black working class area in Berkeley. Having a long-distance daddy can make your heart hurt. But Kamala's new neighbors welcomed her family with smiles and helping hands, warm as sunshine. Still, Kamala was sometimes lonely for her daddy. Luckily, her godmother, Aunt Mary, lived close by and gave Kamala extra hugs whenever she needed them. Like other black and brown kids in the Flatlands, Kamala was part of a California program to integrate the schools. Every day, she rode a yellow bus, bumping through familiar city streets all the way to the wealthy white part of town, with sprawling hillsides painted with gardens. Thousand Oaks Elementary was a world away, but Kamala didn't mind. There, she got to meet kids who were rich and poor, black and white. Kids who celebrated holidays she'd never even heard of. There, teachers taught her to count to 10 in many different languages. "Ooh, I can count to 10 in Spanish," said Eve. "Who taught you that?" asked her mom. "Guadalupe from next door," Eve smiled proudly. School let out before Mrs. Harris got home, so Kamala and Maya spent the afternoons at the Shelton house 2 doors down, where Mrs. Regina Shelton ran daycare and after-school programs with posters on the wall of Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, and Harriet Tubman. Mrs. Shelton was a second mother to Kamala, always encouraging her to have confidence. Once, Mrs. Shelton bit into a lemon bar Kamala had made all by herself, accidentally using salt instead of sugar. "Oh, delicious," said Mrs. Shelton. "Maybe a little too much salt, but really delicious," she said, never pointing out Kamala's total failure. That day, Mrs. Shelton let Kamala walk away feeling successful, feeling like she could do anything. After school, Kamala's days bulged with busyness. She had homework, piano lessons, ballet classes, and Barbie playtime. Thursday nights were the best, though. The family would go to the Rainbow Sign, a cultural center celebrating Black art, music, books, and film. James Baldwin spoke there. Maya Angelou read there. And Nina Simone sang there. Nina's gravelly voiced version of "To Be Young, Gifted, and Black" often rang through Kamala's home. The more she heard this favorite song, the more Kamala thought, "I'm young, gifted, and black too." On Sundays, when they weren't visiting their father, Kamala and Maya rocked from side to side at the 23rd Avenue Church of God, where they tapped tambourines and sang as part of the children's choir. "Fill My Cup, Lord" was Kamala's favorite hymn. The church was where she learned the Bible, that God asks us to speak up for those who can't, to defend the rights of the poor and needy, like some lawyers do. Her Uncle Sherman was that kind of lawyer. Maybe someday Kamala could be one too. "I don't want to be a lawyer," said Eve. "But I like making sandwiches for the homeless. That's helping too, right?" "Right," said her mom. In her first year of middle school, Kamala would need a lot of faith. She learned a new lesson about change, a lesson dressed in down jackets and mittens. Her family was moving north, where 12 feet of snow and her mother's new job waited in Montreal. It will be a wonderful adventure, Shamala told her girls. But Kamala grumbled. The thought of leaving her friends and the warmth of sunny California made her shiver. It was February, and Montreal, robed in winter's sparkling white, felt like it had ice in its veins. Kamala couldn't stop shivering. Worse yet, their new neighbors spoke French, a language Kamala's mother insisted her daughters learn. The English name of the French school her mother handpicked for them was Our Lady of the Snows. That's a funny name, said Eve. Maybe, said her mom. But Kamala wasn't laughing. Montreal was no place for a lotus flower. Sighing, Kamala unpacked her new clothes and her old experiences, like marching for change with her mom. One spring day, when the temperature rose enough for outdoor sports, Kamala and Maya marched in front of their apartment building, waving picket signs because kids weren't allowed to play soccer on the front lawn. It wasn't fair, and Kamala cared a lot about fairness. The building manager read Kamala and Maya's signs and changed the rules. Kamala adjusted to life in Canada, but memories of her home country still rang her heart like a bell. After graduating high school, she ached to return to America, where her parents had nursed her on the civil rights movement. She couldn't wait to follow in the footsteps of her heroes, Constance Baker Motley, Charles Hamilton Houston, and Thurgood Marshall. Marshall had attended Howard University, and Kamala decided she would too. On her first day at Howard, Kamala turned this way and that, smiling at the faces of students from America, Africa, the Caribbean. It was Thursday nights at the Rainbow Sign all over again, where everyone in the room was black like her. They reminded her of home and the people she wanted to help, the people she wanted to fight for. This university would begin to teach her how. Howard seemed like a perfect place to run her very first campaign. It was for class representative of the Liberal Arts Student Council. Her competition was tough, but so was Kamala. Every day, between classes, she passed out flyers in the campus yard and told any students who'd listen why they should vote for her. When the last ballot was counted, Kamala came out the winner. Daddy says I don't have any competition because there's only one me, said Eve. That's right, said her mom. He should tell Kamala there's only one her. Eve's mom just smiled. Kamala's time at Howard was focused on the future. She competed on the debate team to sharpen her speaking skills. She interned at the Federal Trade Commission. She did research at the National Archives to study the workings of government. And on weekends, she joined fellow students on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. to protest apartheid in South Africa. Kamala was preparing to be a woman warrior. Like Wonder Woman? Asked Eve. No, better, said her mom. Wonder Woman isn't real. Nothing matched the magic of her second summer break when Kamala stepped through the doors of the private Senate subway as an intern for Senator Alan Cranston. Kamala could barely hold in the secret of her joy. What could be better than learning from someone whose footsteps echoed in the halls of power every day? After Howard, California called Kamala home to study at Hastings College of the Law. Court cases and contracts filled Kamala's mind, but changing lives filled her heart. Elected president of the Black Law Students Association, Kamala invited major law firms to a job fair so that more Black graduates had a fair chance to be hired by the best companies in the country. This work was great practice for Kamala's future. Graduating law school meant there was one more exam to take, the California bar. Without passing it, Kamala could not practice the law. She didn't pass, which taught Kamala something new: failure. It is the toughest teacher, but it can also be the best because it makes you dig down deep and try harder. On the second try, Kamala passed. "If at first you don't succeed," said Eve's mom, "try again," finished Eve. Kamala was finally ready to climb the mountain of her dreams. First, deputy district attorney. Next, the first female district attorney of San Francisco. Then, the first Black woman attorney general of California. Peak by peak she rose, eventually becoming the second Black woman voted into the U.S. Senate. Lawyer, prosecutor, senator. The little girl named Lotus Flower had turned herself into a person others could call on for help. "Did she use magic to turn herself into that person?" asked Eve. "No, sweetie. Kamala just used hard work." As senator, Kamala fought for laws to help workers earn more money, joined the Women's March on Washington for equality and civil rights, and telephoned lawyers to help immigrant children who came to America looking for someplace safe to live. Each time she answered a call for help, Kamala proved that her family's legacy of public service was alive and well in her. "What's a legacy?" asked Eve. "It's like the inheritance you leave behind for your children." Kamala had traveled far, but she hadn't finished climbing the mountain of her dreams. On Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, on the TV show Good Morning America, Kamala told the world, "I'm running for President of the United States." She immediately got goosebumps, wondering if Shirley Chisholm, the first Black woman to run for president, was smiling down from heaven that very moment. Months into the race, Kamala realized that running for president cost more money than she thought, and Kamala's campaign team didn't have enough. She decided to give up her run for the 2020 presidential nomination. Sad to leave the race, Kamala looked forward to all the good work she could still do as Senator Harris. "That's okay," said Eve. "If at first you don't succeed, try again." "Exactly," said her mom. Will Donald and Shamala's daughter ever get to call the White House home? Only God knows. Kamala Harris is still writing her American story. And so are you. I know what happens next, said Eve. What? Asked her mom. Tomorrow, I'll tell Calvin that he's wrong and he's a doofus. Eve Temple, I taught you better than that, said her mother. Okay, said Eve, her fingers crossed behind her back. I won't tell him. That's the end of this story. But now I have a question for you. Will Kamala Harris get to call the White House her home? Today, on Martin Luther King Day 2021, we know that in just a few short days, she will. Kamala Harris never gave up on her dream. And while she might not be the president of the United States, she's the first Black woman to become vice president. Have a great day.
Wow, what an awesome story about Kamala Harris. Thank you for reading, Miss Karima. Kamala Harris teaches us that we can be anything that we want to be. And on January 20th, 2021, she will become the Vice President of the United States of America. She sure was undefeated. And that is the title of our next story. Let's listen. Freedom, freedom, let it ring, said Dr. King. Let it ring from north to south, let it ring from house to house. Freedom, freedom, let it ring, said Dr. King.
Hello, I am Stephen Herring, and it gives me great pleasure to share these life-affirming words with all of you. The Undefeated by Kwame Alexander. Illustrations by Kadir Nelson. This is for the unforgettable, the swift and sweet ones who hurled history and opened a world of possible. The ones who survived America by any means necessary, and the ones who didn't. This is for the undeniable, the ones who scored with chains on one hand and faith in the other. This is for the unflappable, the sophisticated ones who box adversity and tackle vision. Who shine their light for the world to see and don't stop till the break of dawn. This is for the unafraid, the audacious ones who carried the red, white, and weary blues on the battlefield to save an imperfect union. The righteous marching ones who sang, "We shall not be moved," because Black lives matter. This is for the unspeakable. This is for the unspeakable. This is for the unspeakable. This is for the unlimited, Unstoppable ones, the dreamers and doers who swim across the big sea of our imagination and show us the majestic shores of the promised land. The Wilma Rudolphs, the Muhammad Alis, the Althea Gibsons, the Jesse Owenses, the Jordans and the LeBrons, the Serenas and the Cheryls, the Reese Whitleys and the undiscovered. This is for the unbelievable, the we real cool ones. This is for the unbending, the black as the night is beautiful ones. This is for the underdogs and the uncertain, the unspoken but no longer untitled. This is for the undefeated. This is for you, and you, and you. This is for us.
Wow, what a powerful story. Thank you for reading with us, actor and singer Stephen Herring. Wow, we have heard some amazing stories today, and we've learned so much. We've sung some songs, and we've talked about stories of triumph, of stories of resilience. But we've also talked about some things that are a little tough. Young people out there, if you have questions, we want you to ask them. And if you have ideas and thoughts, we want you to share them. I'm so excited that we have another member of the Rho Theta Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and the founder of the Antiracism Academy, Brandee Blocker, here to share some tips and ideas with the educators and with the parents out there who are looking to have these needed, these important, and these meaningful conversations with the young people in your lives.
Do you remember the first conversation your parents or teachers had with you about racism? How old were you? What did they say? If you're a parent or teacher who's grappling with talking to your kids about these issues, stay tuned for 5 tips for talking to your kids about racism. Welcome to the Antiracism Academy. I'm Brandee Blocker Anderson, and I'm a triple Ivy League educated lawyer, teacher, activist, and the mother of an adorable 3-year-old named William. We'll be going over 5 tips for talking to your kids about racism. Number 1, educate yourself first. Before we can engage in meaningful conversations with our kids about racism and white supremacy, it's crucial that we deal with our own feelings and educate ourselves about historical and current events before trying to explain them to our children. There are many writers, artists, and scholars of color who have dedicated their careers to teaching the world about how racism continues to operate. Parents and teachers should tell stories of past and current struggles for justice and inform these lessons with insights and experiences of people of color. Number 2, watch your actions. Everyone knows that actions speak louder than words. We must watch our actions around our kids. Our kids notice how we treat and talk to people of other races. They also pick up on how we feel about other races by the shows we watch and the books we read. So if you're only watching and reading things that do not feature a diverse range of character identities, then your kids may interpret this as racial bias. Number 3, talk about race. Many of us have good intentions when we avoid talking to our kids about race. If you're one of those parents, you probably think you're preserving your kids' innocence by putting it off. Or you may simply be trying to avoid your own discomfort with the topic. For Black parents and other parents of color, we don't really have a choice when it comes to talking to our kids about it because it's so pervasive in our lives and our family histories. When white parents don't talk to their kids about race, this creates a huge disconnect. When coupled with a lack of diversity in your neighborhoods, schools, and the media we consume, this literally creates 2 different realities for white children and children of color. If we fail to equip our kids with the words, tools, values, and resources to stand up for what's right and actively work against racism, then we haven't prepared them well at all. Number 4, don't teach your kids to be colorblind. Many well-intentioned parents and teachers teach their kids to be colorblind or not to see color, but the reality of the situation is that they do see physical differences in the way people look. Colorblindness negates the experiences of Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, and it communicates that an essential aspect of our identity is invisible and insignificant. Instead of teaching children colorblindness, it's perfectly appropriate to acknowledge that our friends can be all different colors and religions and even from different countries. The key here is helping kids understand that differences between people do exist, but that all people are important and deserve to be treated fairly and with respect. We must do more than just teach our kids to be kind. Remember, you can't encourage your kid to stand up for racial equality if you don't talk to them about it in the first place. To help you go beyond colorblindness, I've included a link in the description box to a book called What's the Difference? Being Different is Amazing by Doyen Richards, which is a great book to help young kids talk about and celebrate differences. I've also included a link to a children's board book entitled Anti-Racist Baby by Professor Ibram X. Kendi. Parents and teachers should read books like these with their kids to consistently normalize diversity. Number 5, don't be afraid to be vulnerable. When we're vulnerable with our kids about our feelings, we affirm theirs. It's okay to communicate that we're scared, but we can empower our children by reminding them to stay hopeful because things can change. The important thing here is to note that you don't need to be an expert or have all the answers. If you don't know how to answer something, be honest and say so. Tell your child that you'll find out and share what you've learned later. I'm Brandee Blacker-Anderson. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Again, my name is Lindsay, and I am a member of the Rho Theta Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Please be sure to follow us so that you can come to all of our family events that will happen throughout the year. Now, as we continue to honor the legacy of a true fighter for justice, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., today and every day, let's sing a song on the way out. You know the words, and we'll see you real soon. Freedom, freedom, let it ring, said Dr. King. Let it ring from north to south. Let it ring from house to house. Freedom, freedom, let it ring, said Dr. King. Take care.